Exceptional rail trail urbanism, streetcar garage adaptive reuse, roads so dangerous you need to wave a neon orange flag in order to cross them safely. Salt Lake City is often associated with the great outdoors, big pickup trucks, low crime suburbs, and having the largest downtown city blocks in America. So of course, on my recent trip, I set out to find just what urbanism looks like in Utah's mostly car-centric Mormon corridor. If you're new here, this is Fourth Place, your place to learn about US geography, urbanism, transportation, and city planning. This is my third official vlog-style video after my Sacramento pilot and my Orlando visit just a few weeks back. You all seem to like this style, and I thoroughly enjoy making these types of videos, so as promised, I left Los Angeles once again, this time on a plane to Salt Lake City International, one of my favorite airports in the country. The city's international airport is connected to the region's TRAX light rail system. And while I was in the air, I was familiarizing myself with the TRAX system, since this 24-hour trip was going to be completely car-free for me. The TRAX light rail system is run by the Utah Transit Authority and has three main lines serving Salt Lake City's Mormon corridor. The blue line runs from Draper, Utah in the south to downtown Salt Lake City, following the I-15 corridor and connecting major suburbs like Sandy and Midvale. The red line stretches from the University of Utah on the east side to the southwest suburb of Daybreak, passing through areas like Sugar House, Murray, and South Jordan. And finally, the green line connects Salt Lake City International Airport to the western suburbs, running through downtown before heading west towards West Valley City. The system is designed around a hub at Salt Lake Central Station, where TRAX meets Frontrunner, the region's commuter rail service, and various city bus routes. My hotel was located in downtown, where I quickly found myself questioning my choice to visit this city in the first place. Because, as I mentioned earlier, this downtown is home to the nation's largest city blocks. In Urban Planning 101 textbooks across the country, you'll often see comparisons between Salt Lake City's downtown grid and scale comparisons to different city blocks across the US. And I do feel the need to show a few of those comparisons here, just to express how massive these things really are. It would be one thing if the land use within these city blocks was at least sort of smart, but for the most part, there's a lot of car-centric waste. This is obviously against so many core urban planning principles, and enables high-speed driving, heightened awareness on the pedestrian's part due to a low pedestrian awareness on the driver's part, and really just an overall complete disregard for people-centric development in favor of more surface parking, single-use office buildings, and an endless array of car dealerships. All of which have no place within a downtown core in 2025. Nevertheless, I made the trek to Salt Lake City's urban core district that I would be visiting first, the Ballpark neighborhood, named after Smith's Ballpark, home of the Salt Lake Bees, the AAA affiliate of the LA Angels. I began on the western end of 900 South, at the start of the 9-line trail. Salt Lake City's 3.1-mile multi-use urban pathway developed along a former Union Pacific Railroad corridor. This urban trail would be my North Star for most of my time in the city, as it runs east along 900 South, one of the original streets laid out in 1847 by Brigham Young and Mormon pioneers, and which harbors almost all of the city's finest urban core neighborhoods. This section of the Ballpark district that I'm walking through has been rezoned into a downtown support district, which is a category in the city's urban planning code meant to foster development of sustainable urban neighborhoods, able to accommodate commercial, office, residential, and many other uses that relate to and support the central business district. This is great. And experiencing the district firsthand, you can so clearly see the fruits of the city's strategic urban planning and revitalization efforts. Salt Lake City's Route 9 bus line stops here, as well as all three TRAX lines, and the neighborhood even has a few of these green bike stations dotted along the rail trail. Intermodality, people, it's the name of the urbanism game. So much of the new forward-thinking development progress here is thanks to the city's 9-line corridor master plan. The Ballpark neighborhood is only the first of a few districts that have been targeted for massive overhaul along the 9-line corridor, but what I can say based off first impressions alone is that the activation of urbanist master planning along the 9-line trail is nothing short of sensational, given that, after all, we are in Salt Lake City, in a region of the country certainly not known for their smart urban core master planning, historically speaking. You're seeing the 9-line trail get adequate use, and you're certainly seeing many small businesses begin to move into the Ballpark neighborhood too. I would, however, like to see more density along this incredible bike infrastructure, especially in the form of infill and redevelopment along West Temple Street, the road that connects the Central Business District and the Ballpark District. As it stands, the commercial and retail offerings on this part of the corridor are also a strong suit, with a selection of markets, coffee shops, and restaurants, further enhancing livability and a car-free lifestyle for the residents that work and live here. As the Ballpark District was once a part of the city's broader industrial district, I was very appreciative to see the re-greening efforts going on here too. The Ballpark District is certainly a work in progress, but one that's progressing very well. Moving east along 900 South, the city only gets better as the road narrows and the Victorian-era street grid gets a lot more tighter, cozier, and certainly more colorful in more ways than one. Eventually, I strolled into the Maven district, one of many micro-neighborhoods along 900 South, mostly made up of curated, locally owned businesses making use of ground-level space in both old streetcar buildings and also new apartment buildings. Most of the Maven district has also been rezoned into a more residential business district to complement the old Victorian and Craftsman-era residential footprint further into the urban core. I'm also glad to see that the city has adopted a no minimum parking requirement policy here, and I hope it'll spur some more density along State Street in particular to bridge the gap in growth between the Ballpark and the Maven district. For as small as the Maven district is, really only encompassing a city block and a half, it definitely punches above its weight when it comes to community amenities. The district features a locally owned bookstore, multiple record stores, multiple cafes, jewelry and gift shops, salons, plant shops, and an exceptional ice cream parlor. Not to mention its location right on the 9-line trail, which, due to its rather recent introduction, is taking a little getting used to for some locals. And I just couldn't help but venture into the more residential streets too, just long enough to take in this beautiful fall foliage. November in Utah truly is a thing of beauty. But back on 900 South, it wasn't long until I happened upon the next great section of urban core urbanism, here in the Central 9th District. Central 9th continues the trend of redevelopment and rezoning along the 9-line trail, and here, residential lots have been rezoned to allow small businesses to flourish inside them, creating a residential/commercial hybrid that has become a local hotspot for pedestrian and trail-driven foot traffic, similar to the city of Portland's Northwest 21st and 23rd Streets, as well as Abbot Kinney Boulevard in the Venice neighborhood of Los Angeles. There are a ton of community-oriented locally owned businesses here, making for a great time for me during my walkthrough. I was glad to see new developers are also taking advantage of the increased foot traffic in this area, and the neighborhood is welcoming a grocery co-op later this year. So far, seeing how Salt Lake City has been reactivating these long-neglected sections of its urban core is just awesome, and yet again adds to a rather new trend throughout America's many urban cores that certainly gives me a lot of hope and joy for the future of new urbanism as a whole. Maybe if these old streetcar neighborhoods are finally seeing the investments they've needed for so long, perhaps we can start to reshape and revitalize our many dead downtowns across this nation. Anyway, if you happen to visit Central 9th, do not miss Loki Coffee and their miniature lattes. Oh, and I have to mention how great of the city it was to turn this previously 4-lane road into a 2-lane road with a median turning lane, while simultaneously adding space for the 9-line trail. Great job, Salt Lake. And of course, what's a strong urban core neighborhood without a grandiose 19th century park, am I right? Well, 900 South has one of those too, and it's called Liberty Park, Salt Lake City's oldest and second largest public park, spanning over 80 acres. The land that the park sits on today was originally claimed by an early Mormon settler and businessman by the name of Isaac Chase, who built on his property, among other things, a grist mill used for grinding wheat and corn. That mill still stands today and is the oldest surviving commercial building in Utah, just to give you a sense of how old this part of the city really is. In 1860, Brigham Young purchased the mill and the surrounding farmland from Chase in exchange for a home in downtown Salt Lake. But after Young's death in 1877, the Mormon Church sold the land to Salt Lake City in 1881 for $27,000, and it was transformed into Liberty Park. For me, it was a great place to walk around, enjoy the cool weather, and explore the park's many uses and landmarks, including its tennis courts, koi pond, and of course, the Chase Mill. Continuing down 900 South, it wasn't long until I discovered the last stretch of urban core urbanism in this part of the city. But while it might seem like walking down 900 South in this area of the city is mostly safe for pedestrians, I'd be mistaken if I didn't mention just how jarring some of the stretches of this walk were. Especially when we'd run into these insane 9-lane wide roads cutting their way through an otherwise low-key street grid. Just east of Liberty Park here, I saw something I had really never seen before on my urban explorations. These are for pedestrians to use here at the junction of 900 South and 700 East for visibility purposes. You see, if you're crossing at a light as a pedestrian with the right-of-way, you may be at risk of being bulldozed by an F-150, unable to see you walking over the sheer size of their ego, which would no doubt instantly kill you, as has happened many times on 700 East. This is unless you're waving the orange flag of pedestrian neglect, signaling submission to the almighty automobile. It's kinda crazy that there's a need for this here in the neighborhoods. There are so many better ways to get drivers to drive slower and more appropriately in an area like this. And frankly, the lack of businesses near the park here is telling too. And it makes sense that developers are weary of building or investing near these junctions due to the sheer fact of how dangerous it is for pedestrians and cyclists. But soon enough, I arrived at the up-and-coming 9th and 9th neighborhood, arguably the city's hottest hipster hangout at the moment. This is good land use planning. This is how you make the most of a wide streetcar corridor. Wide sidewalks combined with the urban bike trail, pedestrian-scale development, abundant greenery with plenty of shaded benches, buffered turning radii for vehicles, bike-sharing docks, street medians, ample crosswalks. So far, this was my favorite urban core neighborhood. But honestly, that's hard to say, because I've genuinely been impressed by all of these little micro neighborhoods dotted along 900 South. 9th and 9th just so happened to be my favorite as far as food and shopping goes, as I was able to try some amazing Mexican food at Lola, and grab a homemade Pop-Tart pie at Pie Fight, which was attached to this fantastic vintage store called Uncommon. 9th and 9th is a gem in so many ways, but I just wish it had more medium density to bring everything together. It would certainly fit the character of the neighborhood, and at the moment there's only one such apartment building on the main street, which I definitely think developers would be smart to build upon if the land opens up. And I think I've pinpointed the first target for infill and redevelopment. Interestingly enough, as I was leaving the 9th and 9th neighborhood, I passed by this old Telegraph Exchange building circa 1911. Looks like it's being retrofitted into condos, which was pretty cool to see. Now, just because I was finished walking 900 South and experiencing its terrific streetcar era neighborhoods, didn't mean I had seen the last of the city's notable streetcar era adaptive reuse. Walking north up that car-centric 700 East road I had just kicked the shins of a minute ago, I found myself walking by Victorian-era homes along what was once one of the busiest streetcar corridors in the city. And the only reason I know this is because on this walk, I stumbled upon this Mission Revival gem. This is Salt Lake City's Trolley Square, a remarkable example of adaptive reuse that has transformed a historic streetcar hub into a thriving mixed-use landmark. Built in 1908 as the maintenance and storage facility for the Utah Light and Railway Company, whose logo has been preserved on the building's exterior, this complex played a key role in Salt Lake City's once extensive streetcar network. And if you were curious, which I know you are, This is a map I found documenting what Salt Lake City's streetcar system looked like around 1921. Inside the facility today, though, you can find a hodgepodge of small, local, and tourist-focused businesses, as well as many big-box chain stores and local amenities, such as Pottery Barn, Williams-Sonoma, Orange Theory Fitness, and Whole Foods. But for me, it was more fun to explore the site for its historical value, admiring the building's exposed steel beams, beautiful murals, and especially the historically accurate diorama of what the streetcar hub and the surrounding built environment looked like around the 1930s. Of course, like many US cities, Salt Lake phased out its streetcars in the mid-20th century in favor of the auto, leaving the depot obsolete and eventually abandoned. So I'm just glad developers saw the value of the site and saved it from being demolished so that people can appreciate and frequent the site in meaningful ways. It just so happened that 1 block north of Trolley Square, I was able to hop aboard the city's modern light rail system, bound for my final stop in the city, the University of Utah, home to not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 on-campus light rail stations. Like my visits to Sacramento State University and Rollins College, my visit to U of U was a way for me to familiarize myself with the city's college town urbanism, which in many cases is often where a city shines the brightest in terms of pedestrianization as well as transit access. I'm happy to report that the U of U scores high in all of these metrics, not only with its extensive light rail access, but with its many dedicated pedestrian and cycling paths weaving their way through the hilly campus terrain. Not to mention the university's shuttle service working in tandem with the city's own bus lines, and it all just makes her a solid university for car-free living. While the university's College Village is quite small in terms of its shopping and dining offerings, the access to Trax's Red Line makes venturing for off-campus amenities safe and easy. This campus is great for outdoors exploring as well, as it's well connected to numerous nature trails being situated at the bottom of the region's mountains and foothills. It really is an outdoor enthusiast's dream school. And beyond that, the university is also home to the city's best museums and historical landmarks, like the Natural History Museum of Utah, the Utah Museum of Fine Arts, and Fort Douglas Military Museum, a Civil War-era camp turned education center. And if you'd like to learn more about Civil War-era camps and forts built in places far from the front lines, be sure to check out last week's video, where I explored such landmarks in San Francisco and beyond. But back to Salt Lake City, as the sun was quickly setting on my long day of exploring. Before I knew it, I was packed up, in my Uber, and on my way to one of my favorite pioneer mountain towns, Park City, Utah, for some much-needed vacation time. But there you have it, less than 24 hours in urban core Salt Lake City. So to conclude the video, I want to talk a bit more about downtown. I didn't get to spend too much time here during my stay, but what I did see was honestly pretty telling of the overall state of urbanism, city and statewide. The downtown area is having a tough time with its self-inflicted car centricity. I don't think I'll ever understand the thought behind the trend of decimating a healthy portion of your city's historic downtown core in order to replace it with an indoor shopping mall. It's something that, at once, kills the unique character and built environment that the city has constructed, demands so much space for parking cars, and itself takes up space as a single-use development when, really, downtown blocks are meant for multiple, smarter uses. It's a trend that has failed time and time again, suffocating and downright destroying the downtowns of many American cities. And then we go and wonder why downtown Los Angeles, downtown Phoenix, and downtown Sacramento suck so bad. These places have been so poorly redeveloped, it's bordering on criminal. And downtown Salt Lake City is, unfortunately, no different. America's strongest surviving historic downtowns like Seattle, Austin, and Nashville have avoided this sort of thing for the most part, but even still, they're far from what they should be. For decades, Salt Lake's zoning code has allowed for the mass exodus of people from its downtown core, and now that they're making efforts to try and reverse that trend, they're realizing just how hard it is to draw those people back in when you've destroyed everything a great downtown is meant to be. America's downtowns were never meant for strip mall experimentation, Wide multi-lane roads just for cars, and an abundance of gas stations, car dealerships, and surface parking lots. They're places for curious exploration, genuine small business fronts, safe local third places, and a healthy amount of green space and housing. But when the bulk of your downtown looks like this, well, there's no wonder why nobody wants to be there. Utah's Mormon corridor is growing fast and sprawling out even faster, so the city is at a crucial inflection point in trying to dampen this sprawl, and I really hope the reinvigoration of its urban core neighborhoods can catch up. It can do so by allowing for more housing to be built along these old streetcar and commercial corridors, as well as the downtown core as a whole, maybe reintroducing the streetcar system into the city before the 2034 Olympics. And unsurprisingly, I think the city should also work on rezoning full city blocks like these that are being used exclusively for surface parking. Maybe one day soon these plots can be actual assets that benefit people instead of F-150s. So to the locals watching, what did I miss? Other than this awesome Union Pacific Depot, of course, which I am very much sad to say I didn't get the chance to visit. And to all, where would you like to see me go next? In keeping with the tradition of hinting at my next city visit, I'll just mention that I've been wondering a lot lately just why so many people seem to be moving to Boise, Idaho so much recently. Seems that it might be time for me to head up to that state for the first time ever. But for now, I'll see you next week from 4th place.